This is the Vapes4Vets podcast. I'm here today with Aaron Augustis. How you doing today, Aaron?
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to come on the
Thank you.
podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity to get the story out and continue to advocate and share the information.
Michael Crowitz actually introduced me to you, and you guys have done some work together in the past.
Yes, we have. I met Michael a few months ago, and we actually started to work together on the Proposition 64 initiative in California, which is the adult legalization for recreational use, and that's how we started to work together. And then we've been communicating over the phone and doing our conference call updates over the free conference call platform and disseminating information that way. So yeah.
And
Which state
are you calling from today?
So I'm from California. I'm in Marin County, Northern California, just 20 minutes or so north of San Francisco.
And you're making the trip up to Seattle Hemp Fest next month?
I am. I will be on a panel, the Veterans panel, with Michael Crowitz and Patrick Seifert during that time. Yeah, I've never been up there, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm coming down there to do a video interview with all you guys, so I'm excited to meet you and excited to see Seattle for the first time.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise.
So California legalization, what's the difference between post legalization and pre-legalization for veterans there?
Well, the recreational really hasn't started yet. There are no locations to even buy recreational cannabis right now. I think what's going on is the Medical Cannabis Regulation Safety Act, so the medicinal side and rules, those are also going to start to take place in 2018 along with the recreational side. But I think California is really focusing more on the recreational and implementing those laws. At least the cities and counties locally where I'm at, they're not even really looking at rec right now. They're kind of just banning it or waiting to get more information, waiting to see how things play out and really get the medical system in place. But for the veterans, one thing that you can say would be different is the fact that you don't need to have a doctor's recommendation to buy cannabis if you're under the recreational side. However, like I was saying, there aren't really any recreational dispensaries, so really you still need to be on the medical side. Plus, you're going to have to pay taxes on the recreational side versus the medical side. So I don't really see a big advantage other than the fact that you don't have to have a doctor's recommendation to get medical cannabis as a veteran or anyone, as long as you're over 21 years old in the state of California.
Do you think legalization will push veterans towards cannabis as opposed to the regular prescription pills?
Well, I think that with legalization, the stigma starts to drop, which is an important factor for people that haven't tried it before, that are weary to try it, or they won't try it because it's illegal or was illegal. So that's going to help with veterans who haven't tried it before, knowing that okay, it's legal now, it's more accepted. But I think still with the recreational versus medical, where we're focusing on the Veterans Cannabis Group is purely medicinal, because we're talking about PTSD, we're talking about military sexual trauma, we're talking about Agent Orange, we're talking about all these different physical and emotional, psychological, medical or health issues that cannabis addresses. I certainly enjoy smoking a joint recreationally, but our focus and drive is on the medicinal side.
And with your organization, Veterans Cannabis Group, do you have to reach out to people a lot to get them to come to you, or do they just come to you through word of mouth?
A lot of people are coming, they're finding the website first, a lot of word of mouth, I get contacted from veterans from all over the country. Sometimes people in states that don't have any medical marijuana laws, and they're asking about, how do we get access, or who should we talk to, and where to go. They're just kind of looking for help, right? They're looking for answers, looking for people. That's another reason why I started the Veterans Cannabis Group, is I was kind of wondering, well, are there any other veterans like me out there that are maybe using cannabis like I am, or have PTSD, and just, are there any other me's out there? And I think that's a lot of what other veterans are searching for, is having a place to feel comfortable, to be a part of. You feel like you belong there. Veterans have a huge camaraderie, that especially guys that have served in theater, in a combat area. Even if you weren't with that person or served with them or anything, but they went over there and you went over there, and you're both veterans. There's a communication, there's a there's a bond that's there. So, and that also brings a trust factor. So that's another valuable thing that we have with each other, is trusting each other, networking with each other, saying, look, have you tried this medicine before? Or have you tried a topical before? Maybe you don't want to smoke cannabis, but you still want to get the relief from it. So how about a tincture? Have you thought about that? So a lot of it, what we're doing with the Veterans Cannabis Group, is educating each other, networking with each other in the cannabis industry, meaning trying to work with each other and do deals with each other, and do business with other veterans. Supporting each other through business, through advocating and being a resource for veterans. And a resource meaning, not only just access to the medicine and, how to get your doctor's recommendation, where to go, and, medicine and stuff like that, but also, what about the VA system? Whenever I meet a veteran, I always want to know, are you in the VA system? Have you enrolled? If you went to Iraq or Afghanistan or any type of conflict, have you ever spoken to a counselor about that? Have you ever addressed that? And if not, why not? And really the typical reason is, well, I don't know. I don't know how to do it, or I don't really want to, or I don't know if I don't deserve, compensation for that, or those types of things. And my response is always, you serve your country. You've already earned these benefits and services that the VA will provide you. So now you just need to go and collect on them. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about, go get your body fixed. If maybe you were an airborne soldier, or you're jumping out of airplanes and your knees are messed up from that, or whatever, right? The military is a hard life. As you know, when you're deployed, it's not like you're in the Hilton over there. You're running around, you're carrying things, you're doing physical hard stuff, long hours, all that stuff, right? So I really encourage any veteran out there that hasn't gone to the VA and enrolled in it, just go to the VA and make an appointment, get in there, and just get yourself checked out and use the benefits that you've already earned, right? Not to mention just the psychological counseling that a lot of guys that go to combat, I think, need when they get back. You don't need it. If you really don't want it, don't do it. You can go down and, live in the mountains and be a hermit, or go down to the Caribbean, and just scuba dive and kind of forget about the world and try to do that, which
that
a
sounds
lot of
pretty
guys
good.
do. And hey, that's great, but you might, there's more to life out there. And I think, from what I've seen, a lot of Vietnam guys, I have Vietnam veterans in my family, and these guys, they never got the counseling. They never went back to the VA, and they never filed claims or any of that stuff. It was a whole different mindset back then. And, unfortunately, some of them turn to alcohol, or they do live in the mountains and just kind of become secluded, you know. And for me, I just wanted to have more life experiences than that. And so I decided to really sit down and do the counseling for, you know, how. And it's not like you have to do it. I'm just saying it's a good thing. We should take the stigma out of it. You know, it's okay. You went to Iraq, you went to Afghanistan, you're having a normal reaction to an abnormal experience. And anyone who says otherwise probably hasn't been there, probably hasn't done that. So, you know, as a veteran who served the country, who went to Iraq to wartime, I am using the VA benefits. I highly recommend any veteran out there, whether or not you deployed or not, just go to the VA and get into the system, because that's what it's there for. The VA system is, what's the primary purpose of the VA medical system? To take care of our veterans. So, which will lead me down this other conversation of the Veterans Equal Access Amendment. Are you familiar with that?
No,
the
I'm
Veterans Equal Access. Okay, the Veterans Equal Access Amendment just passed the House. I think it has to go to the Senate now. But last year, it was blocked by Congress behind closed doors, even though the House and the Senate both approved it. What it will do is it will allow VA doctors the ability to write doctor recommendations for our veterans for medical cannabis in states that have, you know, medical marijuana laws. So that without being prosecuted, right? Without the threat of prosecution, because they are federal employees. So the DOJ could, right? They could come under the risk of losing their job or whatever, because they're federal employees. So the Veterans Equal Access Amendment will allow VA doctors the ability to write the doctor recommendations without a threat from the federal government, essentially. Basically defunding, you know, the DOJ so they can't prosecute and go after these guys, which is huge, right? Which is a really big deal, because going back to what we were saying, Proposition 64 and veterans not needing to have their doctor's recommendation, you know, the argument is, so why does the veteran need to go outside of the VA medical system to get his doctor's recommendation for medical cannabis to treat his service-connected disability, whether that's PTSD or Agent Orange or whatever, right? So why is the veteran having to go outside of the system? That's not right. That's not right. So two things, you know, with Proposition 64, you don't need to have your doctor's recommendation, but it's not the best answer, because you're gonna have to pay taxes and you have to be 21 and older. You know, what about the veteran who's maybe 19 years old? You know, maybe he only served a year or two and was disabled and had an injury, and now he's a minor according to state laws for recreational use. So now he has to go get his doctor's recommendation, but he can't even get it through the VA right now. And hopefully that passes. And that's all taking place right now, over the next few weeks here, or a couple months. Yeah, so those are some you know, interesting points that are going on with veterans in California and well, across the nation, for that matter, for the Veterans Equal Access Amendment. But here's the other interesting thing, Jesse, if you think about this, right? If there's a VA medical system, primary purpose is to take care of veterans, okay? Very clear. It's a federal entity as well, right? So now veterans have this lifelong inherited relationship with the federal government through the VA system, right? Because we're going there for the rest of our lives to get medical treatment. Now, if a Veterans Equal Access Amendment passes and I have a doctor's recommendation from my VA doctor for medical cannabis. Okay, my next natural request is going to be, well, the VA pharmacy should be providing the medicine that is being recommended by my VA doctor. Okay? So you see where that's going, right?
Well, because
You
it's
see
not
where
cheap.
that
It's not cheap to get the medicine these guys need.
it's not cheap. It's not cheap. Yeah, that's one. But you see where I'm going though? So it's like, okay, this is a federal entity, and it has to take care of the veterans. The veterans are requesting this medicine. Let's make a change here, right? So that's why I think, and a lot of other veterans and other people would agree, that the veteran voice and medical issues and all that might be the way to communicate to the federal government more effectively that this is a medicine and we need to make a change with the scheduling, right, of medical cannabis. Right now it's a Schedule 1, no medical purpose. That's definitely not true. Based on my own personal experience and the people that I've talked to and witnessed, personally. So,
Are you able to help veterans in states where it's not medically legal? Like you say that you have veterans reaching out to you from all over the country.
I do, and so the only thing that I can really do is steer them towards a normal chapter. So normal, they're in every state, and I'm also steering people towards the American Legion, because the American Legion is the largest national veterans organization, and they're a major lobbyist, and they're a pretty powerful group. But they've also, on the national level, the headquarters for the American Legion has come out and is lobbying to have cannabis either rescheduled or descheduled for PTSD for our veterans. So that's a pretty big deal. So the veterans that are in states that are, don't have programs yet, statewide programs, I try to direct them to, other advocates like the Normal Group or American Legion. Those are the two that I can think of that are pretty readily available in every state. But, the American Legion, that's just the national chapter is pro-cannabis, but then you have to deal with each individual post, right? And each individual post commander, and what the kind of temperature is in that local area. However, the National American Legion has stated that they are pro-cannabis, so by default, all the underlying, posts that are part of the national should need to follow that and be pro-cannabis as well. So, unfortunately, not all the states are legalized yet, but we're getting very, very, very close to that.
You also mentioned prior to this interview that your organization helps secure employment for veterans, and something I found very interesting that I like to talk about, this HardCarSecurity.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. One of the missions for the Veterans Cannabis Group is to network and work with each other and try to help employ veterans and make sure that veterans have a space inside the cannabis industry. And part of that is employment and security. So here, think about this. The cannabis industry for the last, 70 years or so has been in the black market, unregulated. There's no structure. And it's just been basically the mafia or cartels running the show, besides, on the big scale, big picture, right? So what we're doing with HardCarSecurity is we're taking military veterans who have combat experience and are highly trained with weapons, security, military tactics, all that stuff, have already been in combat zones, and so they know how to operate. They know how to. They have heightened senses of alert, right? All this skill set that the military brings, and we're taking that and we're applying it to the cannabis industry. And we're trying to give this unstructured industry that has been unregulated and bring in some security and some structure, some military structure to the industry. And so we're doing that through armored transportation, literally going up to the Emerald Triangle or anywhere in the state of California, and picking up product, either trim, or it can be any type of cannabis product or cash. So basically we move product and cash within the state of California. And really the routes are basically you go up north, pick up the product because that's where everything is grown, right? And then you bring it south to the Bay Area, or you bring it down to Los Angeles or San Diego. And those are the markets in California. And so we are having veterans do the driving, combat veterans. We also provide security for grow facilities, for warehouses, extraction sites. So we have robots that can patrol an area. We actually have like bots that will drive around. You can program them to do different routes, to do randomized routes. They have cameras on them. You know, they're basically a sentry, right? That's patrolling your area, and you have a veteran, a guard, who can monitor 4 or 5 of these things. And that way you have, 24-hour surveillance, with minimum interruption, like bathroom breaks or just, Facebook, right, Twitter, playing around or just getting hot. Some of these grows like down in Desert Hot Springs or Palm Springs or down in Southern California, it's very hot out there, and it's not fun to sit there and try to monitor or patrol these things, for 12 hours a day or whatever your shift might be in the 120-degree heat. But guess what? The robot doesn't get tired, right? You just recharge the battery, replace it, boom, send it back out.
He's not sweating.
So it's not sweating, yeah. So yeah, it's working out really well. The veterans are disciplined. We're on time. We show up. A lot of industry is still coming to light, right? So you have to build trust with these guys, and with meaning like the growers or the people. You can't just. No one's just going to say, yeah, come up to my farm and pick up 1,000 pounds of trim, and I'll just trust you, right? There's a trust factor that is being built. So it's a lot of good things. The veterans that are out there are perfect fit, myself included, where we're sitting there and we're like, you know what? I just haven't really transitioned. I haven't really readjusted into corporate life or civilian, work life. I just can't. It's not really fitting in. I'm used to the military. I'm used to having missions, mission orientated, high op tempo, stressful environments, carrying weapons and high valuable equipment, that type of stuff. And so veterans are just a perfect fit because we're sitting out there and having this transition struggle into civilian life, but we have all these skill sets and training. And when you sit there and you have a veteran like, look, dude, here's the deal. I got a mission for you. You're going to go up to the Emerald Triangle. You're going to go pick up X amount of flour, and you're going to bring it down to Southern California, and we're going to pay you. And you're going to love it because it's, now all of a sudden the veteran's like, yeah, I got a purpose. I got a mission, right? And I know how to do this, right? I know how to drive in a convoy or be alert. I can be situationally aware. I'm already trained for this. This is awesome. Let's do this. And because they are like little missions, you go up to the mountains, so you got to meet a guy, right? And the guy's got to take you into his farm, or sometimes it's off on a dirt road and you're way the hell out there. But it's all familiar territory for us because we've already done this stuff in foreign countries.
And they're armed?
That are, yes and no. It depends on the load. Okay. One thing that we that is one thing that we don't really want to play around with is messing firearms with a Schedule 1, because that's a big no-no, right? That's serious jail time. It's for every weapon, it's a 5-year minimum mandatory sentence for every weapon. So how do we get around that? Well, I'm not going to say everything on the phone right now because this is being recorded, but you know, on our tactics and stuff. But if we're carrying just cash, then we can absolutely have a firearm, and we will, because at that point we have all of the same licenses as Brinks, right? We got the armored security, we got armored transport, we're a security license. Our drivers have their guard card, their BSIS, you know, live scan guard card, and then to carry a gun, you got to have the gun card. So yeah. Anyways, so carrying guns is this, you know, I don't want to go to prison. And the other thing is that the product is insured. So we have insurance for cannabis specifically. So, and we have up to, right now we have $2 million. We're going to increase it to up to $10 million. So your product is insured. If something does happen and there's an attack or you know, an assault on the van, it's not worth losing your life over, especially when it's already insured. So worst case scenario, just, you know, give up the van and give up the product, and it's all insured anyways. Plus, you know, there's GPS tracking on it. I mean, and here's the thing, like if someone shoots up the van, right, or puts holes through a bunch of flour, it's not like it ruins it. You know, I mean, yeah, you know, a couple bullets through a couple garbage bags. It's not the end of the world, right?
It may become more valuable because it survived an attack.
That's right. That's right. It's got a story behind it now.
There you go. It's like a fine wine.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, this where did this idea come from? Is it something that's needed? Like, would a company like Brinks not want to take it on?
These guys aren't going to mess with it until it's federally legal. That's where my thought on it is, because these guys don't want to have, like, Brinks they're publicly traded, I'm sure, right? I don't know who owns them, but they can't mess with it. Even though we're not actually selling the product or making it, you know, or doing any of those things, we're providing a service to the cannabis industry. So we don't own the cannabis. We're just transporting it from A to B, you know? And so because of that, it actually is beneficial for us, for tax purposes, because of IRS Rule 280E, which the IRS implemented for basically drug trafficking, and saying that if you're trafficking, you are not allowed to write off normal operating expenses. So you have your gross revenue, you minus the cost of goods sold, and that's your gross margin or gross profit. Then in a normal business, you would write off all of your normal operating expenses, and then that would be your net income, and then you pay taxes on that net income, right? However, 280E says, no, you can't write off normal business activities, expenses. So you have to pay taxes on your gross margin. Oh, brutal. I mean, that jacks your effective tax rate way up, right? And it makes it a lot more difficult to be a profitable business. So that's what the dispensaries and the delivery services, they all face that problem, because they're dealing with the plant, the actual cannabis plant. So how are they get around that. They sell T-shirts, they sell, lighters, all this ancillary merchandise, and then they're able to write off a portion of the rent and a portion of the electricity, and et cetera, a portion of the bud tender's time. So why am I saying all this? Because with HardCarSecurity, we don't have to deal with 280E. Big deal. That's a big deal.
And did you have you talked with other groups? Like I know in Colorado, there's a veterans group that's doing the similar thing to what you're doing down in California with the armored cars.
Yeah, I haven't. What's their name?
Excellent question. I should be prepared on that.
Yeah. So I know there's some other groups out there, and I think that's awesome. I think we want to reach out to them. We want to work together with them if possible. I think that there's enough pie to go where everyone can take a slice. And I think, that's another thing that I think is so great about the veteran community is that we want to work with other veterans. If there's another group out there, we don't want to think of them as competitor. Like, let's work together. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can help, save lives out there on the road and be safer and make this thing more efficient and really bring this new industry into light and show the government and the politicians that the veterans are the right job for this. The veterans are the guys and gals. We got the training. We use the plant medicinally, right? So we're in it. I mean, I really think that the veteran community needs to work hand in hand with the cannabis industry for a lot of different reasons.
And Aaron, you're a veteran yourself, correct?
I am, yes. I served in the military for 5.5 years. I was in the Army. I was a combat engineer, 12 Bravo. I was airborne, and I deployed to Iraq in 2003 for 7 months.
And you were there for 7 months?
I was there for 7 months. I was in Mosul, Iraq, which is North Iraq, and my unit we secured an ammo supply point, which is like a weapons cache where they have several bunkers in an area, and so what we did is we secured that area. It was in southern Mosul, and we had a lot of C4, which is plastic explosives. Being engineers, we had a lot of demolitions, so we worked with EOD, explosive ordnance disposal, and we took all of the weapons, the landmines, the RPG rounds, the air defense rounds, all the different weapon systems that they had, and we would put it on the ground, and we would put C4 on top of it and stack it properly to make sure that if you detonate it without, if you blow it up with other explosives, you have to make sure, especially like on artillery rounds, because there's a lot of steel, that you completely destroy it. You don't want a half of a landmine sitting out there because it didn't fully detonate, and then you got to go deal with that. So that's why EOD was there to help us, stack properly and all that kind of stuff. But we basically just destroyed, thousands and hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives and weaponry from the Iraqi military until actually one day a fire broke out, and someone posted the YouTube video. It's called like ammo depot, explosion Mosul or something like that. So what happened was there was a fire. It's 120 degrees out there. Something happened. I think it might have been one of the, for lack of a better word, latrines, right? So where you put diesel fuel in a 55-gallon drum that's cut in half, and that's what you use to go to the restroom, right? And so after a while, you got to burn it. You got to stir it up, and it's pretty nasty.
It's like on that movie Jarhead, correct?
Yeah, dude, hey, you gotta do what you gotta do.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Luckily, I was a sergeant, and there's privates underneath me. Yeah, so there was a fire at the ammo depot, and literally went up for like probably 12 hours of just explosions. I mean, I'm talking about warehouses full of, hundreds of artillery rounds, 155 howitzer rounds and all kinds of stuff. Just literally, we had to get out of there. We lost a couple vehicles, some weapons got melted, some guys got injured. No one died though, but it was a mess. Yeah, that was interesting.
And you must have been located pretty close to the fighting.
We were to the explosions.
To the fighting.
Oh, to the fighting. Yeah, the fighting turned into guerrilla warfare, so it was everywhere. I mean, we were talking about this earlier, but the initial invasion was only 4 weeks, right? Because the U.S. military was so overwhelmingly powerful that if the Iraq military was to engage us directly, as soon as we would locate them, it would be like, oh, all right, you're out. You're done. And especially we own the night vision goggles, all that stuff. So really it just turned into guerrilla warfare very, very quickly, because the Iraqi military just basically dismantled. It's like you and I'm going to take my army clothes off and put on my civilian clothes. If we're getting overrun, it's like, oh, well, the U.S. is here. I definitely don't want to be a soldier, an Iraq soldier, because I'll probably be a POW or something, So what they did is they just took their clothes off, basically took off their uniforms, put on their street clothes, and now they blend in. And how do you know that guy over there used to be a sergeant in the Iraq military, and by the way, he's got a little weapons cache at the school down the road, or at his buddy's house, right? And he's just going to watch you because you're hundreds of guys deep, and you have tons of equipment. You're not hiding anymore at this point. You're not 12 guys in a foxhole at this point. You're actually creating and fortifying posts. You're creating these big. You took over the country, so you're not hiding. So what they do is they'll just watch you. They're watching your routes. They're watching your routes. Oh, okay. In the middle of the night, they'll put an IED. Or what they'll do is they'll be like, oh, over on that hill, there's 500 guys. It's very clear that they're there. They'll just bolt down. They'll take a mortar tube, right? You ever seen those guys, right? They put the mortar in there and they duck down and plug their ears, right? So they'll bolt a mortar tube to the back of like a pickup truck. And then they'll just drive in the area, right? And they'll be like, I don't know, just put it that way. Boom, boom, boom. Launch a couple mortars into your camp. Next thing you know, right, the whole deal, literally flying over your head, and you have no idea where it's going to land, where it's coming from, what, etc. So that was the scary part about that guerrilla warfare. You can't really, you can't engage them directly because they're just firing, the mortar rounds, and then they leave. And they just go. So you have to do. We did some presence patrols. So we would patrol outside of the wire and just to make them aware, like, hey, we're in the area. Don't come over here. Don't. If you're in this area, we will detain you. Basically. So yeah, that was the scary part about it. It's just driving around, and you never know. You just never know. The other scary part, Jesse, was when I first got there, we were going into these bunkers, but there was a period of time where there was no security, there was no authority in the country. There was the Iraq military and Saddam's like Republican Guard, his special little elite unit with the red triangle. That was their little symbol. And then, there's us coming in, right? And all this is taking place. And so for about 6 weeks or so, there's literally just no police, no one. So it's do whatever you want. So these guys were looting. They were, like at Saddam's palace. I'm talking about if it literally wasn't part of the cinder block, the foundation, it was gone. I mean, what's it called? A cover plate to a light switch, gone. The window frame oh, that's gone. Take that thing out, right? Take the whole window out, take the door, everything, just gone. So the same thing kind of happened though in the ammo supply points and in these bunkers, right? These weapon caches, there was no security, there was no one watching it. So when we got there, it looked like people had been in there and been taking stuff, taking weapons. I guarantee that's what they were doing, and that's where these IEDs and stuff are coming from. Because, you know, think about it, there was an Iraq military, and now there's not. And for a short period of time, there was no one, you know, for a couple of weeks, there was no one watching this stuff. And so unfortunately, a lot of it got taken. I mean, that's where these little weapon caches pop up in people's homes and stuff. And we had a lot of guys, we had units bringing us stuff that they would find in the city, and then we would destroy it.
It's amazing what you were telling me before, that when you initially got there, you'd see all these medevac helicopters up in the air, and you knew it wasn't practice anymore.
No, so yeah, that when I was in Kuwait gearing up, because we were in Kuwait for about 3 weeks. It's a big operation, you can imagine, right? You got vehicles coming over on big tanker ships, so you got to go down to Kuwait and go down to the port cities and get your vehicles, and then you got to refit them and get them all geared up, and so it takes some time. So while we're in Kuwait, I remember my squad leader pointed up in the air, and there was a Black Hawk medevac flying, you know, southbound, and he's like, "That's a medevac. That you know, it's probably coming from Baghdad or something." And that's when you realize that this is not a drill. This is, you have live ammo, you have live demolitions, and you know, the rules of engagement are different. You know, the rules of engagement are protect yourself and get out there, complete the mission. So it's you know, just talking about that kind of gets you fired up. Because when you're running around with that much weaponry and firepower, it's a very powerful, like, it's a lot of responsibility, and it's also, I developed a sense of like power, like, because you can, when you walk out into the city or you go out there and you're in this your 3 vehicle convoy or what have you, I mean, you're in charge. You can go into the middle of an intersection and be like, "Everyone stop. All right, we're going through." You know, and the universal language is, if you don't understand what I'm saying or you're not complying, you know, I can use my hands, get back. But at the end of the day, if I point my weapon at you, you're going to understand. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't trust anyone unless you had U.S. Army, Navy, Marine, Air Force, Coast Guard on your chest, right, on your name tape, or the Brits. The Brits were there as well. But that's it. You know, you don't trust anyone else. Period. You never know. You never know.
The British did they have a big presence during the initial invasion, or did they come in later?
No, they were there in the initial. I saw them in Kuwait. That was the only time I saw them, actually. I saw them in Kuwait while we were, you know, passing in the Chowha line or whatever. And I just remember looking at their weapon systems. There was a handful of them, you know. I'd say, I have no idea, 10 to our 100 maybe, or less than that. I really don't know.
And it must be just such a different feeling when, you know, you could be engaging the enemy, you see them across the field, but to be getting bombed and you have no idea which direction it's coming from. Like, I couldn't even imagine that. Yeah. And, you know, I remember one night the whistle starts going in the air and you hear an explosion off in the distance. You're like, oh, you know, so the only thing you can do is you gear up and you go to the berm, to the perimeter, and you pull security. I mean, what else can you do? So it's kind of a helpless, you know, it's not a good spot to be in because you don't know where it's coming, you don't know where it's going to land. And yeah, so there's a lot of pressure on you guys from the media as well. Like, not to just mention the rules, but if you got to be sure who you're engaging, or else it could be your head in some cases. Am I wrong to say that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I agree, but I think, war is not pretty, and war is war. And I would have done whatever I had to do to defend myself against anyone. You know what I mean? It's either like, think about this, dude. Make the other guy die for his country. I mean, at that point, bro, it's like being in a jungle, you know? They want to kill you. Those guys, those people out there, they're not your friend. And, I'm sorry, but if you're gonna try to attack me or my buddies, then we're gonna do what we have to do. I mean, that's just survival. You know what I'm saying? Because at that point, you're a soldier. You didn't make the decision to go to war. The Congress did all that. All that's been decided. Yeah, I'm not talking about killing women and children. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about if you're in a situation where someone's threatening you, and it's your life or theirs. Well, you tell me. What are you going to do? At that point, nothing else matters anymore, right? Nothing matters anymore at that point, because if you don't make the right decision, or if you don't, you might not be coming home, so it all doesn't matter after that if you're dead. I don't know. It's a very intense thing. And it's just like being like laws of the jungle, right? I mean, primal. It's very primal, because you're just in a fight or flight survival mode, and you're just trying to survive, and you're in your little team, you're in your little group, and you're running around doing whatever needs to happen. Fortunately for me, I did not have to take anyone's life, and I'm thankful for that. But I was very, if I had to, I would have, because of everything I just said. And just getting yourself into that mental state where you're ready to take someone's life, or you're ready to do what you have to do. That's a huge stress. But then also when you're actually there on the ground, you're living it, you're in that environment, you're running at 120%, for 7 months or however long you're there, because that's what you have to do. So it's a very just getting to that mental state and living like that for a prolonged period of time is very stressful, right? And your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25. So when I was over there, and the majority of the kids, if you will, that deploy over there, their brains aren't even fully developed. So you're living in this jungle type of fight or flight, primal state of mind, when your brain is developing differently than someone that's in the United States that is living in a non-stressful life, right? Compared to what I'm talking about. So your brain is developing differently because you're on this fight or flight mode. You're constantly, you're not getting a lot of, your sleep patterns are different. You're running missions, right? You're always kind of looking, scanning, watching for people. It's different. So your brain is developing different. So when you get back from that and you're back in the civilian world, well, your brain is fundamentally different now. And that affects you, And
it's not just the combat infantry, like the frontline guys. I've talked to support veterans, and they're doing their regular job while they're getting shelled every day. It's just
exactly. Just living there, just being there is stressful. Because maybe you're a surgeon or you're a paper pusher or whatever you want to call it, guess what? Those guys are still in the middle of Baghdad or Iraq or wherever. They're not doing that job from the Pentagon, right? I mean,
There's death all around them every day.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's amazing, Aaron. I tip my hat to all of you, and I know I've heard from a lot of veterans that they don't really appreciate the thank you for your service. What's your take on that?
You've heard that veterans
They don't like
appreciate when
yeah, they don't like when people say thank you for your service.
Yeah, you know, I think like for me, it's kind of gone in phases where I don't really. Sometimes like I don't want people to know I'm a vet, or I don't want to, you know, because then people want to ask you questions and fucking talk about it, and you're like, look, just because I told you doesn't mean I want to talk to you about it or whatever, right? So I think that sometimes veterans, you know, we just maybe we don't want that spotlight or that recognition at that point in time. You know what I mean? Maybe we're just trying to move on, or eat our ice cream or whatever, go to the movies that day. You know, we don't want to talk about Iraq or think about it. You know what I'm saying?
Especially when you're trying to heal.
Yeah, exactly. But it is appreciated. I really appreciate when people say that. You know, and I guess it's something that if you sit there and really understand and think about it, it's pretty awesome to have people thank you and to be appreciative, because at the end of the day, you know, you're putting your life on the line to protect and serve the country, and it's a big deal, and not everyone does it. And in fact, I think it's like less than 1% of the population actually goes to combat. So that really isolates you too as a returning veteran, you know, trying to relate to other people and find your peers and stuff like that. You know, that's another reason why the Veterans Cannabis Group was started, to try to help connect us with other guys that have similar experiences and that want to talk about cannabis and their experience in Iraq or whatever, and, you know, all that stuff.
You say 1% of the population. That's of America of 350 million people. That's still 3.5 million people who see combat. That's a big population.
Yeah, it is. But it is and it isn't, because it's like those 3.5 million are spread out all over. And then, so, you know, I'm in Marin, or how many other combat veterans are in Marin? You know, there's a few. I'm just saying there's not that many out there. It sounds like a lot, but I guess, you know, I don't know.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's like 350 million people, 3.5 just doesn't seem that big. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, what's the reintegration process like when you're coming back from your tour, when your tour date's up? How does that process begin? Like, what's that like?
From the military side?
Yeah, when your tour date is up. So if you're done today in Iraq or Afghanistan, what's the next step for bringing you home?
I mean, it's kind of funny. you have to debrief with the chaplain when I was returning. And so, I don't know, there was like 4 or 5 of us. And we just basically got around in a little circle and talked for a couple minutes. And that was our debrief. It was kind of funny because you're still in Iraq.
You're not home yet.
Yeah, but and so that was like my debrief. And then I went home, and 45 days later, I was a civilian. So there is no, it's very bad. I think that it needs to be looked at. I think that there needs to be maybe some type of, almost like before you get out, you need to enroll in the VA, and you need to like get your VA, you know, services started, or just get enrolled in it. Because it's not a mandatory thing. You get out and you can do whatever you're a civilian. There's no checkup. There's no, hey, Aaron, so you just spent 7 months in Iraq. Like, how you doing? You know, are you going to the bars and getting wild, or are you like functioning okay? Or, there's no check-in. I think that, and I'm not trying to infringe on your rights as a civilian when you get out, but I think that before you get out, or excuse me, there should be some type of like enrollment in the VA or checkup, I guess, if you will. That's mandatory even, and I'm not opposed to that, especially if you're still in the military. They should just say, look, before you get out, checklist, you got to enroll in your VA. Or, within 30 days of being out of the military, you need to go enroll in your VA and get that started. Because right now, there isn't.
It sounds like in World War II, when they were coming home, they had that few weeks on the ships with all their comrades to kind of, a chill out period before they come home, and you get a quick talk and by a chaplain, then you're immediately shipped home to your family. It's quite substantial.
Yeah, I mean, literally, you can be on the streets of Iraq, one day, and then 45 days later, you're a civilian. That's what happened to me.
I would have thought they would have, I don't want to say held you, but it's a good way to describe it, to make sure that you're...
Right, like do some type of like quarantine, or, be put under like observation, right, or something.
Yeah, that'd make a lot of sense to me.
That's why I think there should be a mandatory like enrollment in the VA, within a certain period of time after you get out.
And what are the initial benefits from as soon as you get out from the VA? Because you were saying like a lot of veterans, they kind of shy away from the VA. Like what are some more of these benefits that they should be exploring?
I think if I recall, I think you get VA, like your medical benefits for 5 years after you get out, but then you have to enroll, or I forget what exactly the process is, but there's a ton of benefits. I mean, your medical benefits at the VA hospital. I mean, you break your foot, you break your toe, or you go in there and get it checked out. The counseling services, medications, just everything. Not to mention VA compensation, monetary payments that you can receive if you have a service-connected disability and you file a VA claim for compensation. One, that's how you get your VA rating, your disability rating, which allows you access to the VA as well, and additional benefits. But then two, it gets you monetary compensation. So by not enrolling and not filing a claim, if you're if you have a service-connected disability, by not doing those things, you're really hurting yourself, and you're really not getting the services and benefits, and a lot of services and benefits that you deserve. Not to mention when you have certain ratings, if you're a 100% disabled veteran, you can. There's a lot of, I think, like there's a lot of other groups out there as well. Like there's tax benefits you can get. You can get state park passes where you can go into any state park in California and not have to pay if you're a veteran, disabled veteran. There's just so many different things. Get veteran license plates. Don't get pulled over as much. Little stuff like that. You can get veteran on your driver's license. So then if you get pulled over or whatever, the police officer will know that you're a veteran, and I think that's beneficial. They'll probably treat you with a little more respect. Try to help you out.
If you're having a bad day, help them understand a bit better.
Maybe, yeah. You're like, if it's maybe you're having a flashback or something, and if he sees veteran on your driver's license, then you're a verified veteran at that point, because you had to submit your DD-214, which is your discharge paperwork to the DMV. So I think it's just another way to identify that you've served your country, and that you should, maybe get a little more respect for that. Yeah.
Well, like you said before, you're heading up to Seattle for HempFest. Are there any other important dates coming up for Veterans Cannabis Group?
Yes, September 13th. We're going to be in Washington, D.C., and this is a pretty big deal, and I know this is recorded, but I think we're pretty much confirmed on everything. We're going to have a panel, and we're going to be hopefully meeting with the Secretary of the VA, and we're going to be talking about what would veterans' life be like if cannabis was legalized on the federal level. You know, how has cannabis helped veterans? Because since 1996, when California passed the first state medical law, there has been no check-in, no, hey, how has this helped the veteran population in California, right? Or, for this matter, it's going to be the nation. But since 1996, there's been no check-in. Like, hey, so what's going on? What's cannabis doing for you guys? How has it helped? And that's what we're going to be talking about, but on the national level to the VA secretary, he's in charge of the VA. So September 13th, that it's going to take place, and we'll have press releases and all that kind of stuff as we get a little bit closer. But that should be a pretty significant panel.
And that's September 13th.
Correct.
Well, Aaron,
and I'll have more information.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll have more information that I'll post on my website, on the veteranscannabisgroup.com website. I'll have it on there, and I'll send out an email blast when that comes. I don't know if I have your email, but you should, if you maybe after this, put your email into our contact list on the website, and then that way you can stay, in touch with us.
Absolutely, and I'll put a link to your website with this podcast.
Cool.
And I'm looking forward to meeting you in Seattle there, Aaron. And this, Veterans Cannabis Group, HardCarSecurity. It's really amazing what you're doing for veterans, and love to have you back on. And as we said earlier, Aaron's going to be one of the guests on the video interviews that we're having in Seattle. So it was great talking to you, Aaron.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much, Jesse. Really appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the veterans, and look forward to meeting you.
Likewise, this has been the Vapes4Vets podcast, brought to you by Namaste Technologies. Aaron Augustis, thank you so much. Can't wait to see you in Seattle there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.